But, we've got the same sort of problems right here at home with this madness. How often have you been told that getting rid of coal-fired electricity and moving to green power, that's going to actually save you money? You get activists with shiny eyes saying, oh yeah, but the sun is free, the wind is free, of course we're going to save money, free energy. In fact, wholesale electricity prices have instead exploded. More than doubled in most states just in the first 3 months of this year. And our energy regulator now says they'll keep rising for a couple of years. And my tip is actually going to be much longer than that. You watch. And you are starting now to see the results in your electricity bill. In fact, you've been seeing it for some time, I'm sure. The regulator says default market offers will now rise by up to 18.3% in New South Wales. 18.3%. Up to 12.5% in Southeast Queensland. 9.5% in South Australia. Joining me is Sky News Finance Editor Ross Greenwood, host of Business Today on Sky News on weekdays at 4:30. Ross, thanks for joining me. Why are our power prices going up and up and up when we have spent billions of dollars on subsidising new wind farms, new solar farms, solar panels on 1 million roofs?
The answer is that it simply doesn't produce enough electricity for Australia's needs. It's simply a case that the price of gas, the price of coal has risen, and so electricity coming from the coal-fired power stations is more expensive. And the reality is also there have been significant outages in some of the coal-fired power stations, and that's meant a shortage of electricity, and there is not enough wind, there is not enough solar to make up the difference. And so ultimately consumers and business in Australia are now going to pay, in many cases, with double-digit price increases over the next 12 months.
Yeah, well, the outages of the coal-fired power stations have a bigger effect because we've closed so many others. There's so little leeway here. It seems to me that this is actually a portent of the future. I mean, we're told by our energy regulators that power prices will keep rising for a couple of years at least.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's inevitable that they have to continue to rise, and especially when you take Liddell's power station out of the mix as well. Now, the great saviour was supposed to be gas. In other words, they'd get these gas interconnectors that would basically fire when there was a shortage of electricity, and because there was seen to be plenty of gas around the place, then there'd be no problems. The problem is that AGL, only in the past day or so, has risen the price of gas to some customers by 4 times the normal contract price. And the reason for that is that there was a gas retailer that's collapsed. So as a result, the thing that was supposed to save the day, gas, there's a shortage on the east coast of gas. Gas prices have gone up. So therefore, to create electricity from gas, the price of that has gone up. So it doesn't matter whether you look at the coal-fired power stations, the prices have gone up. The gas, the prices have gone up. There's not enough wind and solar electricity in the system to cope. And of course, it's not reliable, online, all the time electricity. It is intermittent. And so there is another fundamental problem, and the reason why you get such big spikes in the electricity prices up the east coast of Australia.
Ross, I see an ugly future ahead, and I'm not blaming the Labor government, although I think it's going to make it worse by too much spending and by too much more of the green policies that have helped get us into this mess. But today I went to the shops to buy a nice steak to cook for a guest after this show. Scotch fillet, thought nothing but the best.
Lovely.
$68 a kilo. I've never seen prices like that before. Petrol, $1.90 today, even after, with fuel excise being temporarily halved. I got a bunch of tomatoes to make a tomato sauce, $25. And we've got electricity prices rising and rising. We've got interest rates rising. Ross, I sense that we are hurtling into a cost of living crisis.
Do you know something? What you're talking about right there is inflation. Now, everybody is seeing it, everybody is feeling it. And so a few things have got to happen. Either number one, people's wages have got to rise, and there's a shortage of labour. We've got unemployment at 3.9% and probably heading to 3.5%. And if you've got a shortage of labour, well, then the price of labour will rise, and that will add to this inflation story. You've got the price of goods that are rising in price, partly as a result of the cost of electricity, partly the cost of petrol, partly the cost of food around the world is rising as a result of the Russia-Ukraine situation. The problem here is we somehow thought we were different, that we would escape all of the worries from the rest of the world. But when you see the UK closing in on double-digit inflation, the US above 8% right now and having to raise interest rates very sharply, the real problem is, as it's been said at the Bank of England, they're now on a narrow path to try and avoid recession as they raise interest rates. Well, right here, right now, the new Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, and also the Reserve Bank Governor, Philip Lowe, are on that same very narrow path, almost like hobbits wandering off towards Mordor in the Lord of the Rings. They can't fall off, right? But the reality is right now that path is very narrow and very slippery. And the real danger is that they don't get the settings right. And if they don't, then recession is potentially in front of Australia as it is other parts of the world.
Well, I'm going to note that as a prediction because I am afraid, Ross, that warning might come to fruition. Ross Greenwood, thank you so much indeed for your time.
Always a pleasure, Andrew.